New York, New York. What's going on, everybody? I figured I'd come in with a little Bill Withers today. I think we need Bill today. The way the weather's
Yeah.
acting out in New York City, it is just crazy, man. Everybody, happy Monday. This is Real Talk Chronicles. I'm your host, Bill Foster, with my co-host, Assemblyman Al Taylor, in the building. And
What it
today we
do?
have a special guest, my man, Mr. Alvin Bragg, candidate for district attorney. We are going to get it in early, but we're going to let Bill play for a few more seconds because with all that weather, that snow, I think we need something, like he said, on my mind. And what? Yeah,
Yeah,
Bill.
baby. I already know.
That's it. All right. On the chorus. Huh.
Look at you. Hey.
And I know it's gonna
Be.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah. And that will segue me into this person that we have as our guest today, Al, because I think he's trying to make it a lovely day, a different day.
No
When
question.
we talk about running for office or anything, Al, and you can talk about that because you have experience in that. Um, what is it like? The pressures that compound, just and believe in yourself and first let me just say hello to Alvin Bragg. Hello, Alvin. How are you, brother?
What's up, brother? Good to see you. Good to
Good to
see
see
you.
you. Please,
Wow.
it's always a pleasure, man. It definitely is, and I'm so glad that Al Taylor, Assemblyman, hooked this up because it's good to see you, especially you and I being church brothers, and we worship together. This is just more of a blessing, and we've already sat on a panel together, and
Wow.
I know how you think, and I know the intelligence that you have. But before we get into things, everybody, this is Real Talk Chronicles. I'm your host, Bill Forster, with my co-host. This is Real Talk with Al Taylor, Assemblyman Al Taylor. And today our special guest is Mr. Alvin Bragg, candidate for District Attorney of Manhattan, the Borough of Manhattan. He will tell you about himself in a few minutes. So, Al, how are you doing today, first and foremost?
Hey, listen, I am doing well. I promised myself I would stay hunkered in and not go anywhere, wouldn't go out the door. And I made a call and realized I had a half an hour to get from 157th Street to 178th Street, and nothing moving but the sanitation trucks and two buses. So I geared up, man, but I made it. Man, I was sweating like I robbed the police station by the time I got there. Water was running all over the place, and it wasn't from the snow. It was just dude, it was crazy out there, but it wasn't too cold. I had to go get some meds from my dad, and tomorrow
How's he
he
doing?
will be out. He's doing well, man. He's in the other room having dinner right now. He's having a lovely day. Lovely day.
Good.
Lovely
Good.
day.
Exactly.
Only thing missing is a little bell he got to ring out, but just
Change it into a little butler. Bling, 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 bling.
If we hear you call your name, we know what's going on.
There it is.
Exactly.
4 o'clock in the morning, he holler at me. He's like, yo, Al. I'm like, oh, what? I'm hungry.
Awesome.
It's 4 in the morning. Oh, I'm still hungry.
Yeah, just because the time change don't mean my stomach did. You know what I'm saying?
So, I mean, I'm having a lovely day, man. The snow is really, really nice, man. But I done got to the age I can't plan that stuff, man. Because I get a couple of slips, and I said, let me get on in before I hit the deck out here.
Yeah, a little. I ouch for us. It goes a long way. So we're not thinking about that. Everybody, thank you. I see all my people chiming in. What's up, Liz? Hello, Mark, Bobby, and so many others. Tommy Simon's in the building. So what's up, everybody? And we appreciate you. So I will introduce this gentleman, who I'm glad to know. Like I said, I've known him for some time. Stand-up individual. This is his time to tell us what he wants and what he's going to do. But first and foremost, I just want to ask him, Alvin, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I unlike our assembly member, I didn't venture out. I've been indoors all day. I was saying before we hit the switch to record, I got an 11-year-old and a 15-year-old, and I'll probably go out with them tomorrow. Throw some snowballs at them, and then and then run back in the house.
Yeah. hit him hard. Yeah, exactly. This will be that time to pay back. You know.
Okay.
So,
right.
everybody, like I said, this is Real Talk Chronicles. I'm your host, Bill Forster, with my co-host, Assemblyman Al Taylor. This is Real Talk with Al Taylor. Every first Monday of the month, we come to you. We talk politics. We just talk about anything that is current in today's society. But today, you know, races are opening up, and I just wanted to bring somebody. Al and I wanted to bring somebody on that's running for office. So, without further ado, I'm going to let Mr. Alvin Bragg tell you who he is and his credentials, and we'll get into why you should be running for office. So go ahead.
And I appreciate the opportunity to talk to your folks and to see you. Like I was telling the Assembly member, like used to seeing you every Sunday. I was telling them when you see this, it's right next to the pole, you know. And so
this is different now. Yeah, this is real different now, man. Yeah.
It's hard to fellowship, but I mean, I guess maybe that's a good place to start where I am. I've been in Harlem forever. Been at Abyssinian when we worshiped together since I was, you know, my kid's age.
Yes.
Started out life in Assemblyman Al Taylor's district in Esplanade Gardens, and haven't gone far. I'm now, you know, down on 119. So been in Harlem the whole time, and I love Harlem. I love this island. You know, I think about the people who nurtured me and mentored me, and I want to give back. And on PA in particular, you know, I went to law school and have been kind of fighting in the courts for the past 20 plus years because of early experiences I had growing up in Harlem, right? I was stopped at gunpoint 3 times by the NYPD, you know, starting right around the corner from the church, 139th Street and 7th was the first time. And, you know, it was sticking their hands in my pocket and saying I'm a drug dealer and gun in my face. And I said, this isn't right. I didn't go to law school to know this. And that really was the first thing that kind of put me on the path. But as you know, from your work, right, we got public safety issues too, right? So growing up, I had a gun pointed at me 3 times by people who weren't the police also. And so just really having those experiences, and you throw in and combine, you know, the fish fries and, you know, well, you know, and the playing basketball in the crate and, you know, all that together, the beauty of Harlem. And I went off to college and law school. I came back and said, I really want to focus on, we need to have a system that is fairer and really focuses on public safety. So that's what I've been doing the last 20 plus years. I started out as a civil rights lawyer and a criminal defense lawyer. Then, as you know, I became a federal prosecutor focused on kind of public corruption, integrity issues, and then became the chief deputy attorney general, number 2 lawyer in New York State Attorney General's office. So focusing on, you know, things like, you know, prosecuting the owner of a $30 million business who laundered millions of dollars in drug money, really harming our community. But also prosecuting an FBI agent who lied and intimidated Black and brown witnesses. You know, I think we got to do both. And that's what I want to do as DA, have a fairer, more just system that really focuses on things that like make us safe as opposed to things that, you know, some of these nickel dime cases that are just really, you know, they're just processing people like cogs.
Also, you have a vast knowledge. Nobody can take away your knowledge in law. Can you touched on it a little bit, but just break down from your different places that you worked, the differences of law that you have practiced, and why, like you said, your experience. You definitely, like you said, you're a Harlemite. You're a man of color, which is a beautiful thing too. But just give us some insight into the different laws that you know will help you become a better district attorney for New York, for Manhattan, the county.
Yeah. So when I first got back here and you know, moved over, it's the furthest west, over 151st and Broadway, was living there and was working as a civil rights lawyer. And I was thinking about this summer with all the protests. My first, you know, big case was up near Syracuse. I sued the state police because they had broken up a religious and political peaceful protest that my clients, who are indigenous Americans, members of the Onondaga Nation. So civil rights law, kind of having that basis. And then when I went into government, I was in government for 15 years, really focused on public corruption, people taking money from the government, so government contractors. You know, I had a case with, you know, someone who was supposed to get, I don't know if we have any veterans out there, but he was actually, I think Assemblyman Al Taylor might be a veteran. Am I right about that?
Yes, he is. That's it.
Right. So we had a case with the someone who was supposed to he got $16 million worth of contracts from the Veterans Affairs that were set aside for a disabled veteran. But guess what? He was not disabled and he wasn't a veteran. So like that kind of stuff. I think we're going to see more of that as our budgets start to tighten. People exploiting programs. But I really done a little bit of everything in the space, just really focused on kind of what our community needs, right? In addition to the law enforcement work, I was at the city council, headed up their litigation, focused on affordable housing, focused on labor rights. And so I've sort of done a little bit of everything, really focused on the needs of the community and almost not worrying what the actual, specific statute was, but like what's the harm in the community, and then sitting back and thinking, how can we address it? So like right now, for example, right, I'm representing Gwen Carr and other police accountability folks in a lawsuit against the NYPD seeking transparency. I call that civil rights, but it's not a civil rights statute. It's one of these transparency statutes that allows us to get information from the government. So I kind of figure out what's the harm, and I work backwards and figure out what's the statute, what's the kind of law we need to address the harm.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. Al, any questions? Matter of fact, Al, before we you ask a question, give us some insight into what it's like to run a campaign. Because
we'll take notes for this part. Read this part.
Yeah, because I mean, you've become a successful a winner, and you've been Assemblyman for how many years now, Al?
I'm going into my fourth year. My fourth
term.
My third term, actually. I came in 2017 in a special. So I had to run in 2017. I had to run in 2018 because I finished 1 year. So 2018 I had to run, and then I ran again in 2020. So this year I won't run, but next year I am running. And I laugh because it's.
So when you say you're not running, what do you mean? Why won't you run?
In this year, there's no election for my assembly seat.
Okay.
So this year, and if I could add this while I'm on this platform.
It's your platform, brother. Add it. Yeah.
I am after anywhere between 50 and 60 individuals that will host for 6 to 8 months a Zoom once a month for 6 to 8 months. They get 12, 15 people. It could be anywhere from $35 and up, whatever their clientele is. But I want to start bringing all the small money together that I can. I don't get matching funds. And I bring this up because the most difficult part for me is raising money. The work, you understand what you have to do. And I'm learning the temperature in the room with respect to the politics of it. But the work, I mean, you mentioned earlier, what kind of pressure. There's really no pressure when you have a heart and you believe that you have a voice that lines up with what the people want and they say yes to you. I'm here by the grace of God. My numbers are good, but it's because of the service and the commitment that I've made in the community, not because I've had the financial backings to actually impose a message on people that didn't know me. And by that, I mean, some people have so much money, man, when they cough, it comes out. And they're there with that, but they're not doing the grass work. So I am proud to be here with Alvin tonight. I can call him Alvin because we all brothers in Christ, but he's also that dude. He's that guy that grew up in the community. He's the one that said, hey, I had rods in my face. So I understood, even without a law degree, something is wrong in Denmark with this. So let me go about doing. And so my question, if I can swing over to you, Alvin, is everything happens in God's timing, and the atrocities that have led up to this. I remember in college reading about the Red Summer when the soldiers came home and the cities were ablaze, the urban places, because they no longer want to be relegated to how they were treated before they served in the military. But yet when they came home as African Americans, they were still treated as second-class citizens when they put their lives on the line in France and wherever else the military would have them to go. And the atmosphere or the stage has been set for a monumental change across this world. There are some that say defund the police. I said, well, then tell me what you're going to do with public safety. I'm not so keen on that language as much as I am in transforming. And if you're going to put 3 million over here, then let's put 5 million over here. So my after school programs, PS 123, IS 10, the old Dub, all of those places where you could go and have activities from 3 to 6 or 3 to 7, where you were safe. Your mother knew if you weren't, if you weren't in a house and in front of the building, I'm coming over to that center and drag you out to do your chores. So everything is lined up, and I don't want to say it for you, but what are you bringing in this time and space? And is it because you're Black you should be voted for, or what?
Yeah, no, look, I'm inspired by your service, and I've said this to others before. You know, folks who go into office based on a body of work, a body of service, right? So, you know, things you were doing before you were elected. That's to me how you do it, right? It's a continuation of your work. And for me, you know, I look at the kind of work I've done before, and this is really a moment, an inflection point in our history to continue the kind of work I've done, but from this platform that can really be so impactful. So yeah, I tell folks all the time, so look, I'm Black, I'm from Harlem, I'm from Manhattan, but don't vote for me for that. Vote because I'm the best qualified for the job, right? And that includes experiences I've had because I'm Black now, right? Like I don't get stopped unless I'm Black on that street corner, right? Or, you know, experiences I had growing up in Harlem. You just mentioned all those great resources, right? So for me, you know, my dad ran an urban league in Manhattan on 136th Street. So I can remember, you know, I always like to talk about not just those gunpoint stops, but the good stuff, right? Like I can remember going with him and seeing him talk to people about, you know, re-entering and getting job training, retooling, right? Connecting them with housing, and then taking a break and going around the corner to Seafood Haven and getting a fish sandwich with me, right? Like that's community. And on the way, talking to people, right? Or I tell people, you know, growing up, you know, after my dad left that job, he ran homeless shelters. So we walk around and we see people who he would call his clients, who he would see later that night. Or my mom started out on 125th Street, the state office building, teaching. She ended up at BMCC. We couldn't walk 2 blocks in Harlem growing up without one of her students saying, you know, Professor Bragg, you know, you taught me this. Now I went off, I have this job. You know, I'm tugging in a coat like, come on, let's go. I'm hungry. But like all that stuff adds up and that becomes who you are, right? So do I have those experiences because I'm Black? In part, right? Like, you know, those moments I always tell people 80s in Harlem were special moments. We had issues, but we had a lot of special times. But all of those experiences, the community reinvestment, and then taking that and then doing the cases I've done. And then this is also a big management job, right? We have people who kind of want this job, but they haven't managed a staff before. In the AG's office, I oversaw more than 1,200 people. So, you know, I would not sign up for something. I think we all have a role to play, but we got to be careful what role we sign up for. I wouldn't sign up for something didn't think I was equipped for, right? Because that's a recipe for failure. I want to succeed. So I think having those roles prepare me for this moment. And so I tell folks all the time, like, look, don't vote for me because I'm from Harlem. Don't vote for me because I'm Black. Vote for me because I'm the most qualified for this job who can deliver the change we need for not just our communities, but the whole borough.
Speaking of the whole borough, let me ask this question. If you know, I don't know if you have, you know, the statistics available, but if you're looking at the number of arrests that take place in Manhattan and the information hits the DA's desk, out of X amount of people that are arrested and brought before that office, what is that number and what percentage of that is people of color and what communities are they coming from? Right.
So I can break it down in a couple. So I'll start citywide with the misdemeanor arrests, many of which are not, we're talking about taking up 2 seats on the subway. You know, we're talking about things that aren't really public safety. About 80% citywide of the charges fall into that category, right? So, you know, not things like, you know, the armed robbery or the things that we think about when we watch Law and Order, but more than 80% of the cases are misdemeanors. Wow. And more than 80%, if I think I have the number, I'll double check it while we're on, are people who are non-white. So, that's citywide data. So that's all 5 boroughs. And what I can tell you about our neighborhoods up here is that the Central Harlem zip code. So I think that would probably be, your district and Inez Dickens district. The zip codes in Central Harlem, I think, are the most return to zip codes in the state for people coming back from incarceration, right? So that's and we kind of know that anecdotally, right? But to hear it said in the numbers, and Sophia Elijah's group, I think I saw that statistic on her website, and so that has an effect on communities. We just released a video of me and my brother-in-law talking. He was down at Morehouse College in school, got caught up doing some things. His best friend was murdered in front of him in a drug deal. And he called for me to come down as kind of the big brother and the lawyer. And the point of the video we just shot was, you can come back from that, right? So he came, he lived with my wife and me, and he's doing great now. But not because of the system, in spite of the system, right? The system didn't give him housing, didn't give him employment training, didn't address the trauma of witnessing his best friend get killed in front of him, didn't address the trauma of him being in solitary confinement. And so we need a system that looks at that harm and that trauma and does something, right? Because he just happened to have a great sister, my wife, who said, all right, we're just going to take care of this guy. And we're going to help him until he gets back. And he also had, something within him too, right? So say, all right, I'm going to take this help and I'm going to come back. But we need a system that helps, right? So it doesn't matter what your zip code is if you don't have family who can stand in the breach. And this goes back to when I talked about folks, and this to start with, we got a church mate and a man of the cloth to go back to faith, right? Like I tell people, like, this is the right thing to do. I say it as a Sunday school teacher, right? We got to take care of people. But I also say, and Bill knows this as law enforcement too, it's the right thing to do from a public safety perspective, right? Because it strengthens neighborhoods. If you don't support people when they come back, it's like, all right, well, we're going to give you a Metro card and put you on this bus and you're going to figure it out. Well, like, what's that going to mean for everyone else, right? How do we figure it out? So,
thank you.
I think that's awesome. I have two questions for you, and shout out to everybody that's watching. This is Real Talk Chronicles. I'm your host, Bill Forster, with my co-host, Assemblyman Al Taylor, and we have Mr. Alvin Bragg with us this evening, candidate for district attorney for New York's Manhattan, the county of Manhattan. Let me ask you a question. You definitely said don't vote for you because you're a man of color and things of that magnitude. But what do you think your color can bring to your job?
Yeah. No, look. And I say that almost, I should probably be more specific.
No, I wasn't trying to change. I just wanted you to say, like, the fact of it, and I'll just give you a segue into what I really am asking. People always said, being a law enforcement, it was great that a man of color, me being a black man, I could interact with people in my community. I worked in Harlem. I started my career in Harlem. I grew up in the 3-0. I still reside in the 3-0, but I worked in the 2-8. That was by choice because I wanted to be able to interact and have that trump card. And when I say that trump card, that de-escalating skin tone that came to the table, right? At times I got called out my name sometimes, but I had handled that. But what the thing was, when I saw people and they was like, Bill, it made the job easier. So I was like, okay, come on, you got to move. You can't park here. Hypothetically, you can't double park. And then sometimes they tried to take advantage, and I was like, don't make me do my job now. You know what I'm saying? Mr. and Mrs. Forster didn't raise no punk now. Don't push that button. So I say all that to say, in lieu of what you're doing, you're running for office. Your credentials are impeccable, but now what do you think just being an African American man can give you the advantage over what Courtney Vance, C. Vance is in office now?
Yeah. And so what I was going to say was a tweak it. I would say not only because I'm black, right? It's the experiences to me, right? Many of which we all get by just being black, but some of which are, I think, specific to a time and place in Harlem and experience, many of which is universal, but some of which are not. So what I say, folks, it's not symbolic, right? So throughout my career, I've drawn on these experiences. So when I'm sitting across talk to a police officer before we're going to call that person to testify, right? And I'm asking about a search. I'm not like reading out of the case book and, well, what did you do next, right? It's like, I've been on the street and I've been illegally searched, so I know what to ask, right? Or, when I'm talking to someone who is a survivor of crime, I'm like, well, I've had a semi-automatic weapon pointed to my head, right? I don't want to over-relate. We all have different things, and so that person may have a different, a set of, processing. But, when you've had that, or you've had a knife to your neck, as I have, or a homicide victim on your step, like you have something within you to draw on to talk to the person who's come in, and you're focusing on that person's trauma, as opposed to saying, this is a win for me. I can win this case. Because no, you don't think that way if you've been through it, right? You're not. It's another case or another digit. So I think those experiences are why people should vote for me, right? And now some of those experiences, I think, come uniquely from being, Black in Harlem at that time, but they really inform the job. They inform the I think really the issues of our time, the police accountability, how we can hold police accountable, and also inform the public safety issues, right? When I'm going out and I'm talking to people about their public safety challenges, I understand what they're talking about, right? And then on the flip side, when people say, "Oh, well, it's bad now," it's like the '80s. I said, "Whoa. Crime is still historically low," and I was here in the '80s, right? Not the '80s, And Bill could tell you, right? He was on a job in the '80s, right? And I second precinct. We're not near there yet. That the issue is, it doesn't matter in some sense. If you're the parent of that 1-year-old who was shot in a stroller, the macro data doesn't matter, right? It's just, what are you going to do for my trauma? And so I think that's what I mean when I say don't vote for me because I'm Black. It's these experiences, and those experiences inform the job. It's not just some symbolism, right? It's how you can approach the job and really put people at the center of it, because that's what it's all about, right? These are literally our neighbors, our friends, our family in some instance, that are being most impacted.
Let me ask you a question. Shout out to everybody that's watching. This is Real Talk Chronicles. I'm your host, Bill Forth, and I got my co-host, Assemblyman Al Taylor. Every Monday, we're here, Al Taylor and myself. And this evening, we have candidate hopeful Alan Bragg. He's running for office for district attorney of Manhattan, New York. And I want to ask you a question. What do you think you would do different? Maybe if you want to say your first 100 days, or what do you think you would just be doing different than the current administration that's in there right now?
Yeah. So, Bill, I give you just a classic example. I mean, the list is long, but I just start with talking about shrinking the system. So this summer, a man was arrested on a train for taking up 2 seats on the subway, and then arrested for assault. The charge was he used his face to assault the police officer's hand, which I didn't misspeak. That's just crazy talk, right? So on day one, and I told you my dad used to run homeless shelter, so that really speaks to me. Day one, I'm going to the complaint room. I know you know the complaint room where folks come in and bring the cases, and I'm gonna pull everyone in, and I'm gonna say, look, we got a new day. I don't know how that case got out of the complaint room. I don't know who writes that up. I mean, I challenge any New Yorker to say they haven't taken up 2 seats on the subway, right? Y'all know me. I'm not a little dude, right? So I take up 2 seats when I sit down sometimes, right? So I said, look, your job is to ask what makes us safer. Does that case make us safer? And who in the world wrote it up to say he used his face to assault the police officer? He's telling you he beat him, right? Like, he's not hiding it. So, to focus on a new day where we're not just processing whatever's brought, we're asking, is this a case that's worth doing? Is this a case that makes anyone safer? So we're not doing that, taking up 2 seats, and we're going to invest a police officer who clearly punched someone. And so that's how we shrink the system and get the nonsense out. And on the other side, like, I think there's things that we're not doing that would make us safer. So when I was at the AG's office, work with a bunch of smart data people, they crunched all the ATF, the federal firearm agency's data, and looked at guns found at crime scenes here in New York, and traced them back to the last licensed sale from a federally licensed firearm dealer. There are folks sitting, outside of New York City, outside of Manhattan, profiting off our pain, funneling these illegal here. So I want to focus on that to cut this flow of guns off. So we're not talking about the shooting that happened on 145th Street. We're talking about the licensed firearm dealer who, is in North Carolina and is funneling them through, and we can reach that conduct because the gun hits our streets here in Manhattan. So on both sides, like first example of how we're going to shrink the system, and the second one of how we're going to more effectively focus on safety. Two examples of things I would do differently.
Awesome. I think, it's so funny. And I think a lot of times I think it's fair to say, and this is a question, because I don't want to make a statement and be wrong. It's fair to say, like I think Al said earlier, you're not anti-police. Let's make sure people understand that, right? Because the bottom line is, I think a lot of times people are scared about when they hear a defund and reform and change. Me being former law enforcement, and I've asked, and I'm going to ask anybody that comes on this show that's running for office. I've asked William Allen, I asked Eric Adams, and I definitely will ask him again. And I'm going to ask you, will you reach out to former law enforcement people like myself? Not just, it doesn't have to be me, but it has to be people that are not scared to answer your questions or say, no, Al, no, maybe you don't do that, because the bottom line is people, you mentioned about the 80s and people are fearful of crime going back to the 80s. And a lot of people are blaming, reform, that, the criminals are coming right out. What's your take on that?
Yeah. So first, I'm always going to be in dialogue with everyone who wants to be in dialogue in good faith. And one thing I really pride myself on is, I've worked at this intersection of police accountability and public safety, right? So while I was prosecuting an FBI lying and obstructing justice, I was working with the FBI on other cases, right? So, and look, that leads to a lot of uncomfortable conversations, right? They're like, why are you prosecuting our guy? And I'm like, well, do you lie? I mean, are you intimidating witnesses? And if not, like, what are you worried about? You shouldn't be worried about me. You should be worried about him, because he's making your job harder. He's ruining your brain. You're an FBI agent. He just took the shine off the badge. And that's not an easy conversation to have, but a necessary one. So and once you have it, they're kind of like, yeah, you know what, and I've had the conversation about some of the cases I don't think or have to do with public safety with former law enforcement partners, right? And they say, well, look, I didn't go to the police academy to do the homeless sweep, right? I went to the police academy to do the case you're talking about with the person who's laundering millions of dollars. Like, that's what I signed up to do. So sometimes I think that in the political conversation and in the money, right? Like, overtime and budget, the some of the get crossed up. But yeah, one of my favorite moments from the summer was actually the Abyssinian March right out at Convent Avenue Baptist. And, I walked much that with my daughter, which is great. She's 15, so I share it anytime she give to me, and not with her friends, and with some of her friends, so who are also my Sunday school students, but also with someone who was, I think, worked in the 28 with you, and both her daughters were my Sunday school class. So we walked together and we talked about these issues, and that's we're before we were prosecutor and police officer or defense attorney, like, we were neighbors, right? We were church mates. And so to me, it all comes down to that community conversation, and anyone approaching in good faith, that's where the answers lie, right? So yeah, I'm for cutting the NYPD budget, because I think there's things that they shouldn't be doing. I think that, my late father and what he did on homelessness, if I wanted to address homelessness on the train, I would send his team out there, right? And I would fund it through one of our city agencies that do it that way. But I think that's something, when I talk to officers, they said, well, yeah, I don't want to do that. Like, that's not what I want to do. Use me. Everyone wants to be using their best and highest value. That's not what they're trained to do. So I think having those conversations, and I'm glad you're asking everyone that's coming on, because it's obviously central to the Manhattan DA's office. But one thing that's so important this upcoming, election, right? We got mayor, controller, borough president, 2/3 of the city council. all the leadership is going to basically turn over at the same time. And so we
Yes.
really are charting a path forward. And if you ask me, I mean, I'd say housing, education, and policing are the biggest issues. Now, I focus on policing primarily because I'm running for DA, but even housing, we did tenant harassment cases when I was in the AG's office because they were important. Tenants were getting harassed out of their homes, right? We did cases with fraud where people were stealing from the Department of Education who were supposed to be overseeing the digital divide. I prosecuted someone taking $3 million. So we reached those other issues, but primarily policing is what I focus on. But all these other, the city council is going to vote on the budget. The mayor is going to appoint the new police commissioner. Controller is going to audit the way the funds are spent. So I'm glad you're asking everyone.
Oh, no, I think it wouldn't be real talk if I didn't ask that question, because the bottom line is me being in the position that I am, taking a journalistic standpoint, but still feeling that I have a phone call away from you or anybody else that I've mentioned, and being able to say, well, listen, to be a helpful hand, not a hurtful hand. You know what I'm saying? Because I have the only nickel in this dime that I have is the one to walk down the street, or my wife to walk down the street, or your wife, or Al's wife to walk down the New York City streets, or that old lady to feel like she can go into that building, or that young lady can go into a liquor store and buy some liquor and not be accosted by some hoodlums. You know what I'm saying? Because that was just real barbaric what they did. But the bottom line is we still have crime that is escalating. We could talk about people of color, but I know statistically crime is crime no matter where it's done. And I do feel that Manhattan is the point to mostly all the other boroughs. You're right there next to 1PP. You're right there next to City Hall. Your meeting door, your meetings are just 5 minutes away. So I say all that to say, Al, I don't know if you have a question, but we have some questions coming in. So I just want to know, Al, if you got a question first before I go to the lines.
No, go to the line and then I'll come back in. Let's bring them up. This is your boy Al Taylor with his main man Bill Foster, and you're listening to Real Talk Chronicles.
Exactly.
Alvin Samuels.
That's it.
Sorry, Bragg. I guess Alvin Samuels from Esplanade. Alvin
Bragg.
Yeah.
You was keeping it Harlem. That was a beautiful thing. You was keeping it Harlem.
There's not that many of us Alvins out here. We got to stick together.
That's it.
Just don't call us late for dinner, right?
Shout out to everybody watching. I appreciate it. And the questions are coming in. Sean, my man Sean said, what's up? He said, how cool will it be to change the systematic problems that have historically plagued the district attorney's office in Manhattan?
Yeah, look, so one thing I want to be clear about is this is hard work, right? And I don't know if everyone in this race appreciates it. But I know it because I've been there, right? I was, helping to run the Attorney General's office, and so I know what it's like to start a unit and build a statewide unit. We did that on police accountability. I know what it's like, and we sued Harvey Weinstein when the DA's office didn't do that case at first. We built a case. We held Trump accountable, so I know how to build these hard cases. But I think the biggest issue is the culture change, right? And so, look, we're going to need some, changes in personnel. I tell folks, it's not my most fun day at work, but I've fired people before, right? And that's part of that's part of management, right? Set the expectations. Say, look, this is what we're going to do. Train people, give them the support to do it, and then when they do it, cheer them on and say that's great, and when they don't, hold them accountable. I think that we're going to do things on day one, like I said, like go to the complaint room and talk about judgment and what makes us safer. We're going to be a lot more transparent. I really believe in sunlight. I think if we're putting out and putting out the light, like where the cases are coming from, the kind of cases and what the outcomes are, that really educates the public. And so I think we need a seasoned manager in the job, and we can do some things right away with policy shifts. But a lot of this is going to be hiring. I want to change the hiring philosophy. I mean, how many people, do you know at the DA's office, right? You look at the leadership, it's not diverse, and they have trouble attracting and retaining people who are, kind of community based and have the experiences you can draw on. So I want to change the hiring and say, look, I'm a trial lawyer. I believe in this. You got to have people who can do the, tough cases. We need someone who can do these cases that deal with public corruption, deal with public safety, but we also need people who are rooted in the community and engaged. And so, my first hire when I was building the police accountability unit at the AG's office was someone who could do a homicide case, but he also had a master's in social work. So I want to change the hiring around this model of looking at someone's whole person, because when someone comes in front of them, whether it's a defense lawyer, whether it's the stenographer, whether it's the witness, I want the people on my team to look at everyone else like a whole person. So I got to hold myself to the same standard, right? So when I present myself to my staff, it's like, okay, I'm the DA. I'm also a Sunday school teacher. I'm a Harlem Little League coach. I value that about myself. And what are you bringing to the table in addition to your GPA, and your trial skills? So I think that kind of stuff is going to take a while, to get the hiring and get the accountability. But we can set the tone on day one and start moving the ship in a different direction.
That's awesome. What's so funny? I just want to say this from being an expert witness in the Bronx for the Bronx DA's office when I was in the Bronx working. I had a great relationship working with the DA's office in the Bronx. I had a great relationship when I was in Manhattan working with the DA's office, and a lot of times the omen is that the DAs are not your friend. And I used to always say, well, if you tell the truth, it doesn't make a difference. Like, as long as you don't lie, and that was always the easiest thing for me as a witness to testify upon. So that's why when you said being a trial lawyer, because a lot of times we don't know if people who are running for this seat are good trial lawyers. So if to be a good trial lawyer is another asset to what you're doing, and I applaud that. I just wanted to shout out. I see you, Tanisha. I see you, Jesse. Sean said, Mr. Bragg, work community groups, the street corner resources who are actively working in the community to prevent crime. So I think he's giving you a pat on the back of bravo. My man Doug, who I used to work with in narcotics, he said, but policing has many different aspects other than enforcing the law. So dealing with the homeless is one of them. We're concerned about the fairness and justice in the district attorney's office.
Yeah. So first, I wanted the person who mentioned street corner resources. I was on Aisha Sekou, head street corner resources, last night on her podcast.
Yes.
So I definitely think that work is great. Assemblyman Al Taylor and I were out with Aisha Sekou and others on Saturday across the street from the liquor store, where the woman had her ear bitten off, saying, as a community, we're standing together, with her and her family. And so wait, now I lost the track on the question.
Oh, that's all right, because it's written in here. So basically, so that's a good thing that you, like you said, you're involved. And before I get back to Doug's question, the fact that you and Al were out there, and I know Al's a real ground-working person. Like Al puts his feet to the pavement. Do you think you might be doing that a lot if you get elected? Al,
I think so.
Or do we still got you?
Yeah. No, I'm here.
Sorry.
I
was saying Alvin Bragg, yeah.
Yeah, one thing that is super frustrating is that we don't see the DA out, right? Mm-hmm. And I think traditionally that's not seen as part of the role. Now, there's some things that that the DA shouldn't be doing. Like people ask me about Trump and all that, so you can't comment on an ongoing case like that. Particularly, I'm not in the office and I don't know the date. So there's certainly there's some rules, right? But there's no rule that says the DA can't be out with the community. And we don't see the DA in our communities. We got an office on 125th Street. There's an office in Washington Heights that I think is empty, but the DA's office has an office. I talk to folks on the Upper West Side. Folks don't see the DA out. And so, a big issue is I don't want, folks to have their first interaction with the DA's office down in court, right? That's too late. That means something is going wrong. So we need to be in partnership with Street Corner Resources, with Warm that was out there on Saturday, with other groups that are preventing harm or addressing harm that's already happened, but as part of a process that's holistic and community-based. So I think that's got to be part of the conversation. Yeah, you're right. We need trial lawyers too. We need people in court. There will always be cases to do, but I think we can have better long-term success if we're out I mean, you know, and I don't mean just me as the potential DA, but staff. And so they're saying, that's why I say hiring the whole people, you know, having folks out. I mean, so Bill, I think about the training that you and I did in the Abyssinian basement for the, you know, Crusaders football team and others, right? Like, folks like, oh, there goes a black guy who prosecutes, and there goes a black police officer, right? And they're telling us our rights, right? That's what we need to be doing, right? That's our job. That's why we got into these positions, so we could share that information and help our communities out. And that continues whether you know, first day on the job to the DA. It's got to kind of run through.
Yeah, because I'm a firm believer, you know, and Al Taylor and I talk about this, and you and I have done it. But, you know, like this pandemic has slowed things down, and I've still done it virtually, and I still get offers to do it at colleges and things of that magnitude. But the thing is, that's needed. And I mean, me personally, this is what I think is a part of my calling, to come back out and help enlighten those who don't know the law, to help them, because the bottom line is, I still can walk down that street and get stopped. You know, when people start talking about stop, question, and frisk, I'm a firm believer that stop and question frisk was a necessary tool, but it wasn't used properly. And when you stop an Al Taylor or Alvin Bragg or Bill Forster, but you don't stop the guy that's standing in front of the liquor store for 12 hours, then that's a problem to me. You understand what I'm saying? Because now we need cause, you know, probable cause to do certain things. But don't look for the easy stop, question, and frisk just to put a name on a paper, because it was all about statistics with stop, question, and frisk. So I'm just saying all that to say that a lot of times we you know, a lot of times when people think, because either you're running on a Democratic platform, and I'm correct, is that what you're running on, like on a Democratic platform, that we're soft on crime, or I shouldn't say you are soft on crime. And I don't think that's it. I just think you want fair and due process. Am I fair to say that?
No, definitely. And I know you know this from your work, and I try to tell this to my, you know, folks I've worked on cases over the years, right? So those early times I was stopped, like that, they drove me away from the police, right? There was, I didn't go into, you know, these kind of jobs until well after it. And that's the point I was trying to make to the FBI agents who were asking me about the FBI agents I was prosecuting. It's like, this actually, it makes your job harder because people don't trust you. So then that person who you stopped illegally, that may be your witness next week. And that person you go to talk to, you think that person's going to talk to you or trust you after you've, you know, stuck your hands in the pockets when you didn't have a basis. So trying to have those conversations is about, you know, long term. You know, I can remember that. So I lived in DC for a year between college and law school. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you a little knucklehead story, right? Like, I had a bunch of friends from New York come down, and we went, you know, into like a suburb in Virginia. And, you know, we were all like 21, and we had always played this grudge match of basketball going back, sometimes at West 4th, you know, in the middle of the night. And in New York, you play at West 4th at 3 a.m. Who cares, right? Like, that's just what you do, right? But in the suburbs of Virginia, that's not what you do, right? And we had the car set up with the lights going on, you know, because there were no lights out. And we played, and the police came, right? It's like 3 a.m. And they said, you know, hey fellas, like, what y'all doing? Like, look around. Like, you see all these buildings around? Like, people got to go to work tomorrow, and the lights coming on. So they called us, and we said, yeah, you know, we're like, yeah, we kind of get it. We had through our bad officer, and he said, look, here's the deal. I was 21 once too. You know, next bucket wins. Like, you know, and I'm gonna drive away. I'm not gonna do anything. I'm gonna drive away. I'm gonna come back in 15 minutes. And if you're still here, then I gotta have a different response. And you know what? Like, that this interaction, I felt differently about that place. It was in the neighborhood where I work. I just felt like he gained so much trust, right? Because he was right. Like, it's 3 a.m. and, you know, we shouldn't have been playing basketball, waking people up. I now appreciate that as you know, better with age. But that kind of sort of, you know, just dealing with people as people. And I just thinking about the story you said about, you know, when you were in the 28, like, you know, kind of, you know, like, hey, like, I can problem solve this, right? Like, these kids aren't up to no good. They're just 21 and just thinking about themselves. They're not thinking about the person who's got to go to work in the morning. All right, real quick. Now, so you know what? If he'd you know, come back a week later and needed something, I'd have been like, oh, well, I trust this guy, right? Versus if he'd have thrown us all in the back of the car and made us, go to jail for playing basketball, right? He came to me a week later, I'd probably been like, hey man, like I don't trust you.
And it's so funny that you said that, because I think that was the most like rewarding time of me. Everything I did after I left the 2-8 was for myself, but working in the 2-8 and working in a uniform at the time that I did my time in patrol, I think it was so rewarding to me because I was able to interact, and I gave somebody a nice liaison to talk. So, referencing to something like that, if I would have had a noise complaint, I would have pulled up and I may have watched them play for a second or two. I'm just saying like a minute. And then I could say, okay, I get it. I see why you out here playing, because you're not that good. But if you come out here tomorrow, maybe before I get on work, we can play and I can school you. But I understand, because see, there's a difference in talking to people like yourself that are good kids playing ball, and you don't have to go in there and roust them up and harass them and tell them, yo, get out of here. What are y'all doing out here? Y'all got any drugs? Like, listen, you see these cats are just trying to hone their game skills. So there's a different energy, and I think that's a beautiful thing when you're able to have that. Everybody, this is Real Talk Chronicles. I'm your host, Bill Forster, with my Assemblyman, Al Taylor. Real Talk with Al Taylor. We have Alvin Bragg with us today, candidate for district attorney for New York. I just want to get to Doug's question. He said, but policing has many different aspects other than enforcing the law. So dealing with the homeless is one of them. We're concerned about that. I'm reading it again. The fairness and justice to the district attorney's office. Brenda McLaughlin, she said Jackie Rowe and Warm, WARM, was glad that you were there to support us. That's what's up. Doug said, stop, question, and frisk was a necessary evil at the time, but definitely used the wrong way and many times. Absolutely. So let me ask you this. And Al Taylor, if you got anything, just jump in whenever you can. I don't want to monopolize it. Alvin, a lot of times people are saying now with these new laws that, somebody commits a heinous, violent crime, he gets released right away. Like, we see it countless times. Now, I'm a firm believer that not everybody deserves to go to get incarcerated and wait to trial if they don't have the bail. A person that, didn't pay child support, you know what I'm saying, or got a suspended license and he didn't know it, and now he can't get a bail money to get out of jail. He doesn't need to stay in there for a week and a half or how long he is for trial. My question to you is, what's your take on that? What would you do differently? Would you keep it the way it is? Because like I said, a lot of times, especially people from law enforcement, I'm not talking about myself, I'm just saying this is what the whispers are, that they feel like this is what's making the city go to it. A lot of times people are feeling afraid that the people are committing violent crimes, and they're coming back out now, and what's stopping them from still committing these crimes? So the law is not working in that behalf. Like too much left, too liberal. Al Taylor, after Alvin replies, I want to hear your take on that too. So go ahead, Al.
Yeah. So look, I think that look, I posted bail before, right, and more than once for family, and in cases where my loved one got out and maybe someone else on that charge didn't because of money. So I firmly believe we can't have money as the distinguishing factor. And the example I always like to point to is Harvey Weinstein, being out on bail. No one really complained about that, right? Because he's an old white man with lots of privilege. But he was more dangerous, to me than lots of folks from our neighborhoods are locked up. So I believe in the bail reform. I think that I've looked at the data from this year in terms of the argument that the bail reform caused this uptick. I just don't think there's a basis for that. People who were on bail, and for example, the gun uptick in violence, and there's no correlation. But I'm a big believer in data, and I think this is an anomalous year, right? Like, this is a year that is just unlike any other in my lifetime. We've all been idle. We're in the middle of economic upheaval, and so I think I supported the bail reform, and I'm not willing to draw inferences based upon what I see as speculation by the mayor and the police commissioner. But I think we need to look at the data and be driven by it. One thing, it's sort of how you always frame this. So a slightly related issue, people were complaining about the people released on kind of COVID, clemency. And they said, oh, well, they're recidivating. Look at everyone. And I wrote an op-ed. The Post was saying 3% of people released because of COVID who wouldn't have been released otherwise. And I flipped it around. I was like, anything you do in life to 97%, I was taught that was an A+. So, 97% of folks, when we looked at the data in August, who were released on kind of COVID health stuff, we're not recommitting anything. So I think it's how you look at some of the data. And I really try to kind of, look and see what the mayor was saying in August. I kind of criticized his gun plan. I felt he was trying to blame ineffectual leadership on this bail reform where the data is just not there. So that's my view on it. And I do not want to go back to a system where we've got wealth as a dividing line between who is in pretrial versus who isn't. And that's really the system we have now, right? I mean, Harvey Weinstein and Alvin Bragg, well, not me, because I've got obviously a lot of economic privilege, but, Harvey Weinstein and someone, who doesn't have the same means, same charge, under our old system, one's going to be in pretrial and the other isn't. And I don't think that's fair.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Wow.
Go ahead, Al. I mean, I think, and like I said, I can't speak for all people of color, and I can't speak for all law enforcement. I can only ask the questions that have been asked to me before, and what do I think about it? So that's why I can only ask you, because if you're the man in that seat, then that's what questions are going to come, and people either going to like it or they're going to disagree with it. So everybody, this is a candidate for the district attorney, Mr. Alvin Bragg. He's with Al Taylor and myself, and Real Talk with Al Taylor every Monday. So this is what we're doing. If you're out here liking what you hear, please subscribe to it on YouTube or share it, or on Facebook, share it that way. Just let people know this is what we have. We having real talk with real people about real issues, not just dropping it like it's hot. We can do that later on. You know what I'm saying? But right now. So I think it's just so important that, I appreciate you for coming on and giving us some insight, because a lot of times people will not have the chance to really converse with you and ask you what your opinion is. I also, too, let me just ask you this question before, I'll turn it over to Ala or the audience, anybody. If data, and I'm only asking this because you mentioned the word, if data showed that crime is spiked because of the reform, would it be something you're thinking about would it be something that you think about tweaking if you could?
If the data showed it, right? And I think we have to, so one thing that I didn't like was in January, right? And this is why I'm kind of saying, but before the bill was even really, the ink was dry, right? People were saying it caused something, right? Or this summer when the police commissioner says, hey, the chokehold bill is caused, it was like, what? The bill's it's not even acted yet. So I would say good faith data, because we know data can be manipulated. So I think we can't draw anything off of this year because it's so wild, right? We have nothing like it. But yeah, look, I don't think we could be stuck in one place. I would have my own data folks who I trust examine it, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Some of these folks who reach conclusions and then back into it with the data, I don't want that. But yeah, we got to be guided by actual evidence.
And that's awesome that you said that. And Al, I'm gonna let you come in. It's awesome that you said that, because we know. I work for numbers can be fudged. You know what I'm saying? They can be.
Yo, that was some straight up. I remember what Trump said. He could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and get away with it. Let me tell you, and Alvin just put the nail in the coffin. This legislation took 55 years to undo. And when we passed that bill in June of the previous year, we undid 55 years of what had existed. When we said bail reform, and let me just raise my hand because I was the young man at 16 that stood before Judge Bruce Wright, turn him loose Bruce. He understood that your skin complexion should not be an automatic death sentence. And if you're poor, then I may charge you with something with respect to how you're going to show you're coming back to court. But I'm not going to charge you $5 when you only have 25 cents. It's ironic. And now it's about controlling the narrative. And this is what pissed me off on the bill, because this bill went effective January 1, 2020, if I got it right. And then by the time we got to March and we were standing on the floor and we were debating the budget, all of these shenanigan things were happening and people were backpedaling on why they need to change the bill. I could not vote in my good conscience and say, oh, hell no. And I want us to take it back to where it started. The moment we passed that legislation, not that the Republicans didn't fight their ass off, but we got to be very damn careful not to drink everybody's Kool-Aid. My mama said you can't eat at everybody's house because you know how they get down. And what happened was there was a whole ground operation from the moment they lost that vote to start running it. And what they wanted to do was on the island and some of states, they wanted to change the narrative, because if you can control the number of Republican senators, then you can control what's happening. They needed to control the Senate, and they lost it. And previously, I'm just going to give some one-on-one education. You had Democrats that were serving as Democrat senators, and then they went and they huddled with the Republicans. They got what they call Lulu. They got chairmanships, they got extra money, they got money, and they was doing their thing. And they were walking around here slapping people on the back. I'm a dim, I'm a dim. But when it came down to things that were going to change for black and brown and for the good of this state, they did not vote for us. They got packed. They all went packing. It was 7 of them. 6 of them lost their jobs because they were playing both sides of the fence wherever they can get their money. But what I want people to remember is go back to 1988, and there was a name called Willie Horton. 1988, and George Bush invoked Willie Horton. And what he did was he tried to scare every white American, like, hide your wife, hide your kids, they coming to get you. But I want us to know, when we look at our history, it's not the first time that white folks have tried to demonize us and say, women, stay away from them. When I was in Germany, the European white women didn't want to have anything to do with the blacks because their parents told them we grew tails. This was racism at its core. And they started to feed that machine. And then you had all these different police unions. But I don't care how far we get, not one of us ever behaved like those yayas, yayas, whatever the hell you want to call them, on January 6th. Law enforcement, military. You talking about a good old apple, American pie, good old boys? Why weren't they called all out for what they were doing? And what I'm saying is I'm so frustrated by it, because if we're going to tell the story, and whoever's out there that want to push back and say, well, you know, maybe we could do it better, but you don't change something in 60 days that took 55 years to do. I would have said, give me more study. Let's consider this. Why were we afraid? People's arms were being twisted, they were being broken, and they wanted to come back to their seats. And I'd rather be out of the office, working, cleaning floors, whatever it is I got to do, than to take a knee for some unconsciousness that I know better to do. They lied, they put a narrative out there, and they've always been able to spin a good news. Look at this, all the way up. Everybody said, I never knew Trump would do that. From the very first time he stepped out at Trump Plaza, he said, I'm going to be the president. And he started demonizing, I'm going to build a wall. He talked about Mexicans. He talked about paraplegic. He talked about gay and lesbian. There was nobody. He talked about his colleagues in government. He talked about their wives, and she's so ugly. He didn't leave anybody. And he did a Humpty Hump. I grabbed him by the front. And they still arrested him. They still voted for him. But all of a sudden, people are like, I can't believe he did that. Let me tell you, people will show you who they are. We must believe it. So I just want to push back to anybody that think that we acted too soon. I think we acted too slow, and then we got pumped to go back, because I would not have taken any, and y'all ain't ever got to vote for me. But I'm never going to do the wrong thing by my people. And I'm not saying we were 100,000% right, but how do you change something, and it took 55 years to do it, and then 60 days later, and they said this. Let's say they had 80,000 numbers, hypothetically. And the way we wrote this legislation, it was not that violent criminals can get out. We were very mindful. If you were a rapist, if you were domestic violence, you were a gun carrier, you couldn't walk out. Here's a funny thing. Look how long it took them to find the guy that bit the lady's ear. Check that out. How long it took them to get out in Brooklyn was another domestic thing. But remember, each person that came out, They had a news crew following the people. He just got out. And then he went back and said, I want to thank the legislator for letting me out. This guy was doing one-on-one interviews. Come on, what the hell's going on? We got to stop and understand, if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. The Republicans put the fix in. They lost, and right now we're the supermajority in the Senate. But this was politics. All politics. Whoever's telling the narrative or puts it out first gets the win. I'm sorry, I get very upset about that one because I know
that's all right.
Right? But at the same time, people saying, and then you had little grandma saying, "Oh Lord, what y'all doing?" Because they're buying the 6 o'clock news. They're buying the Fox News. In the same way that cannabis is a drug that has more benefits than not, we got to change that whole stereotype because marijuana was associated with Mexican, and you don't want to drink that, you don't want to smoke that because hide your wife, hide your kids. White folks have always used the scare tactic to pull back and put that face on America. But how many white folks were on the Capitol steps of America and that frightened everybody?
That's real talk. No, that's real talk, everybody. This is Real Talk Chronicles. That was Assemblyman Al Taylor, and this is Real Talk with Al Taylor every Monday, the first Monday of the month. I'm your host, Bill Forster, and we have candidate for district attorney in Manhattan, Mr. Alvin Bragg. This is a beautiful thing, everybody. Where are you going to get these kind of interviews and have an opportunity to ask people that are running for offices that can affect you? That's why I tried to tag so many of you today that live in the borough of Manhattan. Tell a friend, share this. Let them hear what Mr. Bragg has to say, because the bottom line is, don't call me later if he gets in the office and talk about, yo, I got a problem. I need my man here. Because I ain't going to, because listen, I'm not going to call him for that. I'm going to call him and wish him happy holidays and how he doing and his wife. But I ain't going to call him because you need me, because the bottom line is, that's how we go wrong all of the time, trying to look out for people that don't need to deserve to be looked out. You know what I'm saying? There's nothing wrong with knowing somebody, because that's a beautiful point. But let's not abuse the people that we have in places that, and when they get there, and hopefully, I wish you all the luck with that. Sean said one more question. He said one last question for Mr. Bragg. Does he feel that this new rank choice voting will affect the outcome of his race for DA? This is something new that the community is still confused by, and maybe you can elaborate. Either one of you can elaborate on what that is.
Yeah. Oh, rank check. You got it.
So I can say this. It does not apply in the DA's race. So for mayor, controller, borough president, city council, all the other races, you will be able to rank your top choices, and so there won't be a runoff.
Yes.
In a Manhattan DA's race, whoever gets the most votes wins. And so, if you get, 18% of the vote and no one else, and everyone else gets lower because it's a lot of people in the field, that's the way it works. There's no ranked choice vote. So I'm concerned that it's going to be confusing, because you're going to have a whole ballot for the first time that we do ranked choice voting on. And in the Manhattan DA's race, it's going to be the one thing on there where you don't rank it. So the Board of Election really has to step up public education on this. It just really needs to, because it's going to be a source of great confusion.
Yes. Alvin is absolutely right. It's actually the campaign finance board's responsibility to make that information available and known to the voters. And we can put it this way: it's for city council races primarily, mayoral race. It does not apply to the state senate and the assembly. And so what you really have in essence is your one vote now is worth 5 votes. By that, you get to take that ballot. I don't know how big that thing is, if it's going to be 4 or 5 pages, because so many people are running. And what happens is you will put your first choice. And then after you do your first choice, you can add 4 more names. If you don't, it's not the end of the game. It just means you only got a chance to select one person. So Bill is my first choice. Alvin is my second choice. Al is my third choice, and so forth. And what they do is, they rank them. And so you get a chance, your one vote becomes 5 opportunities, and whoever comes in with the higher. And what they're trying to do is eliminate runoffs. So in 2001, we had a runoff. 9/11 hit on election day, and at the time I was the deputy chief clerk for New York City Board of Elections. We were operating an election until 9/11 hit. Then we had to run 3 more elections. We had to run excuse me, we had to run another one like 30, 40 days later. Then we had to do a runoff because you didn't get more than 50% of the vote. And then you ran in November. So the idea here, in theory, and so everybody's aware, this is what the citizens of this state, this city want. This was a vote, and it won. I think it can be to some of you all's thinking, it could be a little confusing. So I have to make sense of this, and I'm going to be doing some campaign updates, not campaign, but FYI information. But one voter will go in and they will have an opportunity to vote. So for example, you may see this going on. You'll be like, well, wait a minute, are they so chumsy? You'll see city council members, you'll see even mayoral candidates. They're doing the 1-2 kumbaya because Bill is my number one and Scott is my number two. And they're rolling together because, hey, listen, I may get your 2 vote, you may get my 1 vote, but at the end of the day, if other people are putting me in as their 3rd choice or their 5th choice, you get your 1st, and then you have your 2nd choice, then you have your 3rd choice and your 4th choice. So basically, that's what rank is. And what will happen is the one that gets the most will get it, so you don't have a runoff.
So it's basically, it's almost like you said, the point man gets the vote, and everybody else gets a little trickle down, like they get
exactly. So on my card, you're my number 1 dude. So you got the first one. And then I be like, yo, I don't want nobody else but Bill. But I have a chance to still make a difference because I still have 4 more choices. I can just check them. Bam. You know what? I've heard that name, whatever, and I put it down. I heard of Timbuktu. I put them down. And then you rank them how you feel. And then other people are doing the same thing. At the end of the day, the one that walks away with the most numbers gets it.
So let me ask you a question. Do you guys favor this, or you don't favor this? What's your take on this, really? I mean, got you. That's what I wanted to hear. That's what I wanted. What's your take on it, Alvin?
I'll say from my perspective, because my race is not ranked choice, I'm just really worried about the confusion of people getting the DAs and going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the DA's race, and they're gonna throw that ballot out.
Exactly.
So I really want to see what the ballot is going to look like, right? I am a little concerned that if the Manhattan DA's race, which I think is tremendously important, particularly in our communities, if it's the last on the ballot, someone might have made 40 decisions by the time they get to it, right? Mayor, that's 5. Controller, that's 5. Borough president, that's another 5. City council, that's another 5, 10, 50. That's 20 right there. Then you get the DA. You know, yeah, we might be on the 3rd page. So I'm concerned people might just walk out. So we got to really do a push, for my campaign to say, look, 1, it's just 1 vote. There's no ranked choice. And 2, don't forget about us. Like, if it's a 4-page ballot. So I really want to see what the ballot is going to look like. I think the positioning is really going to matter. And I think that I'm concerned that people will rank rank in our race, and they'll throw the ballot out, right? I mean,
which is very, very, very plausible. Or to your point, they may walk out at the end. So there's a lot, and right now we're having discussions, even as today, how many signatures are going to be required on the ballot. I mean, to get on the ballot, there is a push to not have any signatures collected, but do some alternative things to validate the petitions to get people on the ballot. We may, and it hasn't been solidified, it may be something for an assembly person, you need 500 signatures, valid signatures to get on the ballot. Most people typically would bring in, like, we try to bring in anywhere between 3,500 or a little bit more than that. So it takes it's hard to knock you off the ballot for invalid signatures or subscribing witnesses. The game is too muttered, and ultimately we have to get to a point where you can do same-day registration and same-day voting. I believe that will happen at some point, but it's murky if you don't understand where you're at. But at the end of the day, that 500 number that's required will most likely become just 150 signatures required. That works in a dense city like New York, but it doesn't work in the rural communities because we could go supermarkets, subway stations, and everything in between. And there they have to knock on doors. So we haven't landed that plane right now. We're having this conversation on the legislative end, but we have to give it to you guys relatively quickly because petitions have to be printed and whatever that process is, because petitions hit the street on March 2nd. So you need time to print and all of those things like that. And I just want to throw this out here. And I think Bill touched on it. But he was kind of joking, like, well, don't call me later talking about, yo, can I talk to your man? I need a hookup. Because we know how we get, y'all. Can I get that hookup? Well, here's the hookup. Here's the hookup. You are sitting and listening and maybe you're multitasking, but come back to this video, come back to this platform and look at the contact information for Alvin Samuel. Sam. I keep saying Samuel, that's my man.
Alvin Bragg.
No, Alvin Bragg, that's my man. Listen, Alvin Bragg is a candidate for the district attorney's office here in Manhattan. And you don't have to live in Manhattan to be supportive. I'm not his campaign manager. Yes, I've endorsed him, and I endorsed him based on his credentials, nothing else. And we got to know each other better, but his credentials says he's qualified. And if you believe what I believe, or you want to believe what I believe, then start to do the research. And then just say, you know what? Let me do this. How can I be a part? When you look at what happened in Georgia and you saw that it was, you had a president that was basically telling the Secretary of State, throw this election. And thank God he has some moral fortitude to fight back. But you saw a preacher and another gentleman win. And I want to thank Abrams because she was pushing that narrative. So we don't have the luxury.
Love her. Yeah.
We don't have the luxury to sit back. I mean, we're enjoying ourselves on this cool Monday night and it's snowing. But as an African American, as a person of color in America, in New York City, from the time you were born to the time you die, your life is legislated. People are making decisions about your life. And you're like, what happened there? How did that happen? I don't know. Get involved. Either you lead, follow, or get the hell out of the way. There's nothing in the middle. And what I would say is, if you don't like them, then do your research and understand why I don't like Alvin.
Tell us why.
Exactly. Do your research and say, well, you know what? This is why I do like him. Or you know what? I got some things I need to clear up. Because the phone game is good. If I tell you, like, I got a discount down at Modell's, I think they're out of business. Yo, you rolling. Yo, they got the Adidas, the Shell joints. Yo, they only $5.99. What? I'm there, son, in the snow. So here's a good deal. Check them out. Yeah. Look them up. And then say, hey, you know what? I only have $5. I only have $2. I don't have any money, but I'll make some phone calls for him. I'm going to tell my friends about him. That's how we get this done. Don't get lost in the big shots. Look at who will carry the water, who will do the hard work, who will tell you you are wrong and you know you're wrong and won't sugarcoat it, but they'll still love you. And that's what we need. We don't have enough of that in here. And my man will do that. From Sunday school teaching to raising his own kids to surviving guns thrown in his face. He's that dude. He's that dude, not because he's black, but because he's seasoned and he's educated and he's qualified. So that's what we have to look at. I just wanted to throw that out there. This is
it's your show, brother. So you can throw it out there. You know what's so funny?
This is Real Talk with Bill Foster and his boy Al Taylor up in here with Alvin Bragg. No doubt about it. It's going down. Tell your mama, tell your kids, yo, it's going down right here. Real Talk.
Exactly.
Every Monday night, 7 p.m. I'm only here the first Monday on Sunday, but I have crashed a couple of other spots.
Yes, and you're more than welcome always to crash. That's the beautiful thing about this Real Talk family. We can crash on each other's nights, and that's a beautiful thing, and I want that because that's something, too, that I want to put out there. I just got the confirmation the other day that we will be doing a spiritual segment on Real Talk with Pastor Kevin Graves the last Monday of every month, and Al Taylor is welcome, of course, to come back. And it's a spiritual section with just getting closer to the Bible and dealing with today's society, and having gentlemen like Al Taylor and Pastor Graves give it from the perspective of a man of color, from a man of cloth, and just from what they see, and collectively, and give some words of affirmation, some positive affirmation. Also, next week we have on Tuesday we have Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams coming back. We have a special edition for him on Tuesday. It's a 5 o'clock I usually don't do Tuesday. That's my wife's segment, but we will do that 5 o'clock Tuesday. So chime in for that. This is Black History Month too. So please, I ask you all, it's Black History Month every day, every month, but I ask you all out there, talk to your young, let them learn something historical that happened with people of color, Black or Latin people, please, because let's all try to unify. And I put a post out there today. I said we can all do these challenges, but can we challenge to get along and be better people? You know, Alvin, I know I'm not going to keep you too long. I have one question, and then I want to talk about that thing I sent you and Al Taylor. We want to talk about that, and I'll let you go, brother. My man Mark said, he said, if you have time, he said, ask both, how do they feel about learning many of those who planned and stormed the Capitol were former veterans of law enforcement or veterans like themselves? So basically with Mark is a former veteran, my man Mark, he wants to know how both of you felt. And then Alvin, let me ask you that. I'm going to piggyback on that. If that was to happen in New York, how would you prosecute that, brother? Because, you know, it's so funny. So Al Taylor, I'll ask you, how did you feel, a man that took an oath, and I took an oath to protect and serve, you took an oath to protect and serve, that we found out, but we always knew this, and we'll talk about that at another time, that we always knew that they were infiltrated into what we do. I say all that to say, Mark is asking, how did you personally feel about the knowing that there was law enforcement, military people in there?
Oh, man. I think you answered the question in your statement. You know,
yeah.
I'm a former military police officer without question. I didn't get all the privileged jobs. You know, they wouldn't send me to DEA school, but they sent that yokel from Oklahoma to DEA school. I rolled up on cats and they were out of pocket, and I'd be like, yo, my man, y'all can't do that here. And they was like, what? I said, your man say what to me one more time, I'm going to arrest all of y'all. And I'm sorry, apprehend. In the military, we didn't arrest, we apprehended. The point that the brother is asking is, how did I feel? I just began to pray. I prayed for our nation that we would not go into bloodshed in the middle of the street and have a race war based on what we saw, what we were witnessing, and where would they come from next. So I was praying that God would cover us, that he would keep us, because their actions are nothing new. Emmett Till and all the people that were hung, all the people that were law enforcement that came out of this slavery mentality and created this to watch over us, to make sure we were good Black people that stayed on the farm, they were there. You had officers from the Air Force. The woman that was killed was a decorated military personnel. So it didn't surprise me. I've been in the military. I've seen racism. But I know there's a God that is able, and he will hold you down. So we can't get stuck. As I said, watch the narrative. Keep your eye on the Lord, because that's a sucker move. We already knew the heart of man is wicked. It's nothing but wickedness. But everybody is not like that. So you can get your gun, you can do this, you can do that, or you can think about, God, what would you have me to do? Because every knee will bow, every tongue confess that Jesus is Lord. And at the end of the day, I'm praying for my family. I'm praying for this city. Nehemiah, who was the cupbearer, he said when he found out that his city was in ruins, I just want to share this, I'm going to back up. He said that he went to the Father and he said, Lord, forgive me for my sins, for my family's sins in the community, because we've sinned against you. And now heal this land. And so that was my prayer when I saw this. I began to pray that we would not get worse than that, because we are better than that, but we are that also. And don't ever forget the two. The only reason like that, Trump went to the swamps and he just drugged up everything that was in there. Anything, it's easy to hate. It's hard to love.
Boy, save that for you and Pastor Graves, bro. Save that. That's that real talk spiritual. See, I tell you, boy, I got titles for all these shows. So you know, so funny, Alvin. From a law enforcement, I mean, from a prosecution standpoint, what did you take and what did you see, like, on the Capitol? If that happened, God forbid, if that ever happened in New York, you know?
Look, it's treason. There, if it happened here, storming City Hall, obviously, I mean, it's lawlessness. And I mean, there were a few things that stood out for me. And you asked me to focus on law enforcement, so I will.
No,
One,
Alvin, this is Real Talk Chronicles, brother. You just keep it real. You say what you want to say, brother. This is the platform. I'm giving it to you.
Hey, Alvin, as you're saying that, remember what Giuliani did outside of City Hall against Mayor Dave Dinkins? The patrol officers were standing and walking on the roofs of the cars. It was a mini version of what they did there.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say. How I mean, to me, the most disturbing thing was how they opened the gates, right? Like they opened the gates and let them walk on in. I mean, that is, you know, as someone who's done a lot of public investigations, like, yeah, we gotta hold accountable the people who stormed, but the people who were sworn to protect the building just opening the gates and saying, "Come on in," and we got to learn more about these tours that were given the day before. So all of that I would be investigating if this was in New York City, and then folks from New York who are law enforcement who traveled down and did this. How would you feel if you were arrested and they were called to testify in your case? You think they have a little bias against you? Right.
No.
VA, right. I gotta say, hey, look, folks who are storming the Capitol, breaking the law, and exhibiting, you know, bias, but we can't have them involved on cases, right? So that's my immediate reaction. And you know, you're right. We've seen something kind of like it before. And some of it was correct that this is deep into history. You know, Emmett Till and prior.
Awesome. So now, before we go, I have this question that I sent Al and Alvin. I just want to differentiate the two about City Council aims to reduce the NYPD's footprint with sweeping new police reforms. Now, this is something. When people hear these words, reforms, defund, everybody gets a little topsy-turvy. I've read this. I will, if you ask me my personal opinion, some of it I will comment on. Suzanne says, preach out, Mr. Taylor. The narrative of military police participation is not new in our history. God is still bigger. Absolutely. So let me ask you a question, and I'll just read a little excerpt of it. It says, the New York City Council announced on Friday that is its plan to introduce a comprehensive bill package that will reduce the NYPD's footprint in the city and improve police discipline and increase accountability. Among the 11 proposals, stripping the police commissioner's final authority in disciplinary matters, ending qualified immunity for officers who commit misconduct, and give the council the power to deny a mayor a choice of commissioner. Some of these issues, as I've been researching them, go back generations, said one of the package co-sponsors, Brooklyn Council Stephen Levine. So the police commission's final authority on discipline, that goes back 80 years. I'll read this last paragraph and then I want you to comment. Levine added, there are issues that I think have been unaddressed for far too long. And this is the council saying we want to take the opportunity to make these necessary changes now and to not wait any longer. We're taking a proactive stance. So just what I just read, what's your take on it? And I'll start with you, Alvin Bragg, then I'll let you go, Al Taylor. Go ahead.
Yeah, look, I think a lot of this stuff I've been speaking about and support. So start with the appointment process, right? So, like I said, I was at the city council. We was in the general counsel's office, and part of the function was the advice and consent role, like with the council. You know, you think about it in terms of the president, right? If we said the president could appoint the attorney general, and the Senate didn't get to vote, we'd all be like, "Well, that don't sound right." But that's the situation we have in the city right now, right? So the police commissioner gets appointed by the mayor, and the city council doesn't get to weigh in on that. So I think that's the common sense change that just respects, you know, the two branches of government that would be involved in that. And I say that as someone who worked at the city council, actually litigated up to our state's highest court, the power allocation between the mayor and the city council. And so I think it's important to have a legislative check, right? Doesn't mean the legislature gets what they want, but it's advice and consent. They get to have the person come before, ask them questions, and can do up or down. Civilian oversight, I think, is big. I mean, I mentioned, you know, I'm representing, Ms. Carr and other police accountability organizers in a case against de Blasio now. we would not have had anything move forward on that were it not for the Civilian Complaint Review Board. And the police commissioner kind of has the final say. And I think civilian oversight, much like you kind of compare it to our military, right? Having a head of the State Department, ultimately the president, who's a civilian, who's oversees. This mayor, I mean, I think he actually has some of this power, because he can fire the police commissioner, but has hid behind and said, oh, well, that's not, the police commissioner has the final say. So I think we need clarity on that. And the one other thing in reading the article that jumped out to me, and we haven't talked much about it, I actually, Bill, really interested to get your perspective on this, is mental health responses. We got to really do something on this. When I was doing investigations of deaths, caused by police officers, 25 to 50% of them start with a mental health wellness call. And so we just need a different approach. So I'm really all for, there's a great model out in Oregon, where they just sort of send folks in who are not police in the first instance, and the levels of percentage of when they have to call for the police are really, really low. And so to me, it may be harder to scale up. The town in Oregon is nowhere near the size of New York City, but to me that just seems like a really important development. So those are my views on it, and I'd be interested. I don't know enough about vote counting. That's more other people's domain to know where it goes. But I think those are ideas that we should be talking about.
I appreciate that. Al Taylor, I want you to comment. And then after that, I'm going to answer your question that you asked me, Alvin, on the mental health issues situation. And then we can real talk out of here, because I don't want to keep you. I want you to come back, Alvin Bragg. And I don't want Al Taylor's significant other to get mad at me and call my significant other and say, why are we keeping him here? And if Daddy hungry, I want him to get fed tonight. So go ahead, Al. What do you think of that article? Just a little brief. That's why I sent it to both of you. We'll get back into it at another time. Like I said, Alvin Bragg, you're always welcome to come back. We'll talk about it more on that. And I just want to get your mindset on it.
I don't know that I can frame it as eloquently as Alvin did, but certainly oversight is needed. We're looking at so many different reports. The Attorney General just did a report. There was one prior to that, where they're owning and acknowledging there are some things that need to be done better. And I don't want to say because it's broken, you got to do something, but it's broken and it's got to be fixed. So hopefully these ideas, because the devil is always in the detail, you have this legislation. What does it look like when it gets, when you get that pie, by the time you get your slice, what does it look like? Is it what you thought it was? So if they do it right, it could be a good thing. And I'm thinking about all the times you had an officer, and life gives you the advantage of remembering history. Eleanor Bumpers was killed. She was murdered because they alleged that they only fired one shot, and that shot took off her hand with the knife. I believe that she was allegedly holding a knife. But if the first shot took off her hand, why did she get shot twice? The next day or 3 days after, when they were doing a research and they were doing some investigative work in the apartment, they found her thumb. So I never forgot those things. This was an eviction that led to a grandmother being killed. And you had one time you had an officer in Brooklyn who had a mental issue in the late 80s or late 70s. And he just shot a young kid on the street. No reason at all. So there has to be a check and balance on so many levels. And anytime you go into, it's easy to create something new than to change something that exists. And it's difficult. So we have to go in and do the hard work. We have to go in and do those things that sometimes may not be popular in our neighborhood, but it's the right thing to do. And if you're listening to narratives, again, whoever's putting the sound bites out, then you're like, oh, that's what they said. No, do the research. Don't just listen to what we're saying here tonight. Go to different platforms and read, there's something called read, New York Times. There's a lot of stuff that we can find and understand who an individual is. Not just for political purposes, just for ourselves, and something that we can share with our kids, our grandkids, our family around us. Be informed, and be a part of the solution and not part of the problem. And we're gonna go there. Alvin, don't forget to put your information in the chat.
Yeah, no, I was gonna actually say that. So I'm so humbled to have Assemblyman Al Taylor's support and really trying to follow in his kind of servant leadership mold. So he opened the door for research. Let me say alvinbragg.com is the website, and at Alvin Bragg NYC is the handle across social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. At Alvin Bragg NYC, and the website is alvinbragg.com.
Alvin, what I want you to do after this all over, text me, and then I'll come back into this chat, and I'll put it at the end of the chat, out of the podcast. That's real talk. Now, to answer your question, in lieu of mental illness, what I would do if I had the chance to sit down at the table with you or whoever was in power, I would have special officers trained, just like we have special units, homeless and other things, special officers trained, maybe 2 or 3 a tour. So maybe, okay, if it's maybe 2 during the day 2 or 3 during the day tour, 2 or 3 during the night, maybe 2 at midnight that want to work that night. They work out of the borough, because the borough is the center to all different commands. Like the 2-4 precinct is the borough for Manhattan North, and they cover everything all the way up to the 3-4, Manhattan South starts or whatever. You have officers turn out of that precinct. Not just that they have to sit down and wait 8 hours and do nothing. They could be backups in case people are sick. But their main assignment is then when they get a job that says EDP, a mentally disturbed person, they have to fly up to, everybody holds, they contain that person. They keep them confined in an isolated situation until this liaison comes up who is trained, that's had special training with the medical units or some psychological aspect where he could come in. His first course is to de-escalate.
Yes.
To de-escalate. Now, as he has to, as a law enforcement or the other law enforcement's there, have to take action later on, then that's one thing. But then they should be responding along with EMS. But nobody moves until they get there. You know what I'm saying? They lights sirens to that situation. And that's why you have multiple working on those tours. Because the NYPD has liaisons for suicide. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Things of that magnitude. So they have specialized units. Why can't we train officers? And now this isn't any disrespect to any white officer or any black officer or any Latin officer. But let's have people of color fitting the boroughs, the neighborhoods. So the bottom line is not that a white officer can't be a good a mental health crisis officer in Harlem, but the bottom line is I think it might be easier or more comfortable for a person of color that is having a mental problem to see somebody of color to come on and kick it with him and say, "Go, listen, bro, my man." You know what I'm saying? Like, see, I always go back to this and say when I was working, it was easier for me to come on a situation and say, "Hey, bro, what's going on?" And maybe if a white person did that, they may be like, "Yo, you trying to be black?" Not that they are, but the fact of it is, it's just how people correlate things. You understand what I'm saying? The easiest thing that I've said I've had to do is when I worked in Harlem and I came on the scene and either somebody knew me or they listened to my voice. And I've had to check people and tell them, say, listen to the words that are coming out of my mouth and stop looking at the uniform I'm wearing. You understand what I'm saying? So that's what I did. I was old school. I was taught old school. I'm so appreciative of that because I always said any officer can put cuffs on somebody. It took a bigger officer not to cuff somebody, long as he didn't break the law to that aspect of something so heinous or domestic violence at that time. So basically, my mental is I would love to see officers that are trained in how to interact with mentally disturbed people, because the bottom line is officers are not trained.
Mhm.
The only training we have is what to do. And the first thing you do when you're dealing with an EDP person, a mentally disturbed person, is set up a barrier to protect yourself out of harm's reach. You contain them until EMS comes. But you see that a lot of times this is not happening, and officers are thrust into situations that they're not capable of handling. You don't send a little boy to fight a grown man. And I say all that to say that a person that's not knowledgeable or doesn't even care about what he's dealing with, and all is a person that is emotionally disturbed and he picks up a knife, or he goes right back into cop mode, kill or taser. Another thing too, Alvin, if you ever get in office, we want to talk about this, and Al Taylor, I want to talk about this. I've talked about this on other shows. We got to find out about these tasers, because I'm starting to feel like tasers are a prelude to shoot for deadly force, because tasers are not seem like they're not working. Like, what's the voltage on these tasers? We're seeing more people use a taser, and I'm not saying per se in New York. I'm just talking about law enforcement. But if we're going to talk about New York, this is this is the mecca. So a lot of things happen here, and people will follow. You know what I'm saying? And you see people with these tasers, and you're tasing somebody, and what did you hear? Oh, it didn't work. Or I tased somebody, and then now I shot him. Still up in the Bronx, a man, his family. Al. I think Al Taylor. We showed that.
Yes.
Emotionally disturbed man. They tased him first. It didn't work. Then all of a sudden, they said he charged them. They shoot him and kill him. One officer shoots, the other one doesn't. The city, deemed him justified. But the bottom line is, the black officer didn't shoot, and the white officer did. But the white officer tased him supposedly first. The taser didn't work. Then he shoots him. So it seems like there's a pattern, and Alvin, you can talk about it before you get a pattern, a segue is steps. Step one, I arrive. Step two, I tell you, I pull out my taser. Step three, the taser doesn't work. I shoot you. That's the step three. I shoot you with my deadly physical force. I don't know about that. I don't know what your take is on that. I just feel personally that these tasers are not working, and it just becomes justifiable to say that after I pulled out my taser and I shot you with my taser, it didn't work.
Mhm.
Now I can use my deadly physical force. And that's just my take on it. I mean, back in the days, if we were all working a certain time span in law enforcement, we would all pile on a rabbit and beat that behind, and that's what it was, But the bottom line, you wasn't dead. Today's officers, it becomes, and I have a personal problem with this, and I'm sorry for ranting real quick because I wanted to let you go.
It's real
It's just
talk.
that,
Come on, baby.
it's just like I'm tired of seeing soft officers. If you're not built for this, out, you were military police, you were in the military. What is that to say that I can't take that wall, or out, do something? And you say, no, I'm scared.
Nah, dude. I get him, man. I had a dude like your size, and I'm looking at this guy. I'm like, and the guy that was my partner was like Alvin, a little smaller. I'm like, but I'm the guy, so I'm like, okay, he don't know what he doing. He was a tower rat. They just put him in uniform. I'm like, I gotta get this dude, and he's drunk and he's cussing at me, and I'm like, okay, but in my mind I was like, I can't get in trouble for abusing this guy. So he says something. I'm like, okay, I'm still talking to him, but at that point I already know I'm taking him. I grabbed him by his hand, flipped it back. He could almost see it in front of him. And then he tried to push. So I let him go forward. Where he was going, he went straight into a corner. Head first. Bam. And we came out of the corner. I had one cup for him. And my partner was like, what I do now? What I do now? I was like, grab the other arm. And my whole night, I kept saying, they're going to write me up for assault on this guy. And he was definitely bigger than I was. But I knew I was bringing him out of there. And to your point, you have to de-escalate this stuff. And if you don't have, and you're not equipped, then stand down, let the duty officer come, let somebody else come. Because our job was always to protect immediate. If there's no life in danger, and if I can keep you in my sight and making sure you're not harming yourself or no one else, then we got time. And if the duty officer wants to come and somebody else wants to come, but there is such a disregard for life that we'll just pop the trigger. They did it in Philly. Clearly this dude had a problem. And they just, I think to your point, Bill, it is definitely a lack of training. I think part of what I'm hearing you say needs to be hashed out in that conversation with the new administrators coming in through city council, but also on your side, Alvin, what would that look like in terms of prosecuting a case like that? I guess you'd have to present it to the grand jury or whatever. Is a grand jury called to look at something like that? Or is it always internal?
It's really interesting to hear the talk.
Sorry, Bill, I just jumped in there.
No, you're supposed to. You're supposed to.
Yeah. Because the one thing I've been advocating for from the sort of the legal end of it is you should only use deadly force as a last resort, right? You should only take a life if you have to, right? And what you just talked about are, measures. If you can do something else, well, then you shouldn't kill someone. I mean, to me, that's like, that should be the law. That's not the law in our state for police officers right now. So hearing y'all talk about the experiences and how to not use deadly force, how to sometimes just wait. Sometimes the biggest thing, as you just said, is just wait. Like we're going to wait the situation out. Someone else gets here, wait it out, diffuse the situation, take time. But I think we need to look at the law too. So.
Yeah, I mean, Alvin and Al, I think it's something because like I said, I've mentioned this. I've mentioned this to anybody that's running for mayor or will become mayor if I have a platform to them. I think, law enforcement officers should have 3 extra months of hand-to-hand combat. Not the fact that if you scared, say you scared. And that was an old saying that we had in narcotics for my old narcotics people. It's to say, if you scared, say you scared. And basically what we were saying, if you knew you wasn't, you didn't have it in your heart to go to that set and try to buy those drugs or go in that building, don't go. Just say you scared. We'll respect that more. What we're not seeing is we're seeing a lot of scared people try to do God's work in a sense where they think there's God's work. Let me tell you something. Not everybody's built to do law enforcement. But we come to find out that the tests are easy to take in. But what I am thinking, and maybe Alvin, you can tell me this from a legal standpoint, I'd rather see somebody get their arm broke, get a fat lip, lose a tooth, but not get killed because that officer was trained in not using deadly physical force, but he was able to go hand-to-hand combat to subdue a person. Now, that's a whole different legality thing. I know it is because now somebody's going to say, oh, the officer used excessive force, right? But wait a minute. Now, from a law enforcement standpoint, I'm not going to let you hurt me. And I don't care what society says. I don't care what anybody says. If I got to fight against an Alvin or Al Taylor or anybody or a Rock, a Dwayne Rock Johnson, you're not going to tell me how to chop down that tree when you're sitting down there pushing some papers. It's not happening. But the bottom line is, if I'm trained in 3 months of hand-to-hand combat, jiu-jitsu, boxing, whatever, biting, whatever it is that you trained in 3 months of, right? When you can go to court and say, this officer took that step, tased, hand-to-hand combat. Oh, excuse me, Detective Forster, what are your trainings? I was trained in taser. I was trained in the ass. I was trained in mace. I had 3 months of academy self-defense. Call an instructor, a witness, expert witnesses. What is the academy instruction course in 3 months? We teach them jiu-jitsu. We teach them MMA. We teach them wrestling techniques. We teach them some boxing. 3 months consecutively on to their academy. Now when they go to court, I don't know, Alvin, is it easier to testify or justify a trial case and somebody saying, listen, this officer had no choice to defend himself with his firearm after he did all that? I don't know. Give me some insight on what your thoughts on that. So I gave you a lot. I know I gave you a lot with that.
Yeah, well, I know the departmental kind of use of force spectrum, right? So the sort of graded escalation. So that's the kind of departmental, and that's in most departments that I've worked with. But I like I said, I think that the fundamental tenet is you only use, well, I guess 2 fundamental tenets. you de-escalate, and you only use deadly force as a matter of last resort, right? So, if in between that, the de-escalation has not worked, and then you are, then in the sort of use of force spectrum, right? So, you kind of go up the ladder in terms of the force that's used. And to me, if deadly force if it can be resolved without deadly force, that's what you do. And I think that's what the law should be. I think the law should say that. The law is not that use of force spectrum, right? The use of force spectrum is the, kind of department handbook, but it's not necessarily the criminal law. And so I would have, and I've been advocating for this, that the law be, shifted to that use of force is a last resort.
And it's so funny, just and like I said, we only got a few more minutes. And shout out to Wilson in the building. Wilson and I used to work together. We from Harlem together. So Wilson has also said, he says, great idea. Also, Sean said, great idea about the I'm talking about, I guess, the EDP. Wilson said other departments have a beanbag type weapons to shoot. He said, Wilson said, I took down many of guys on my own, twice my size, training and no fear. Absolutely. I just think that being in a city, like being an inner city child, I think we were all taught not to be a punk. Not that we had to be formal fighters, but I think, Alvin, your mother and father, Al, your mother and father, my mother and father taught us, yo, listen, better come home with all them pencils and pens. Don't tell me that somebody took it. Don't tell me somebody took your lunch. Don't tell me somebody did something messed up. So don't tell me somebody messed up your coat that I bought for Easter. That's the only coat you're gonna get until the next time around. So we became trained as kids to not be scared of anybody else. Not that we were formal fighters. Now, unlike me, unlike a lot of people, yes, I've had 30 years of martial arts, but that was something I did. I played ball too. So, but martial arts was a thing that was a confidence booster also, that when I went on a set, and all it took was able to handle a situation a different way, a lock, a wrist. Back then, maybe now that situation would be seen, oh, look at this officer. He's using unnecessary force. But I didn't shoot him. But I got him in a gooseneck, and he's coming along. You understand what I'm saying? Because the bottom line is me showing how me and they be able to lock him and lock his wrist, telling him, listen, I'm gonna pop your wrist off, and you ain't gonna never be able to use it again like you think you do. You know what I'm saying? See, there's just certain conversations, but what we have is I think from a law enforcement standpoint, and I always talk man of color first before I talk law enforcement, because I'm always gonna be black, the African American. But understanding what law enforcement may think is that a lot of things are black and white, but sometimes these split-second decisions are not black and white answers. And a lot of times law enforcement does not want to be judged by the actions of people that have never been in there. Alvin, a person who doesn't know how to prosecute a case can't tell you how to prosecute a case, can't tell you the law. Only you or somebody like ourselves that may have legal knowledge do that. But they can, if a person sit back from a Monday morning quarterback position and says, oh, Alvin, you prosecuted that case, you should have. Why didn't you give him bail? Well, wait a minute. He just killed his mother and he killed his mother, his wife, and his baby. Well, he's not committed guilty yet until he's proven guilty. Hey, whoa. He may have the knives in his hand. So I'm just giving those examples, and it might not be a great one. I'm just saying some people cannot tell you what's black and white unless they've been down that road. Yeah. Your take on that?
Obviously, we have juries, right? So we do entrust juries to make those decisions. That's our system. But I gotta apologize, y'all. I actually have to kind of take care of some stuff in
no, I didn't want to keep you this long. I apologize to you, but that's the one thing with Real Talk. It does run on, and we definitely don't go past 2 hours. I wanted to keep you for an hour, but you have been such a great host. And the beautiful thing is you are welcome back. On behalf of myself, Al Taylor can say his piece. Thank you so much, Alvin Bragg. Please come back again. We apologize for keeping you past a certain time.
No, I'm happy to be in dialogue. Just had to hop. So I appreciate it. I appreciate being on.
Thank you so much.
Assemblyman Al Taylor. Like I said, Alvin Bragg, ALVINBRAGG.com, or at Alvin Bragg NYC. Look forward to continuing the dialogue. Thank you all so much for your leadership. I appreciate it. God bless.
Welcome back.
Bless you. Thank you. Thank you.
Al Taylor, before we go, what do you think about what I was just throwing out there in the universe? Take care, Alvin Bragg. Yeah,
all right, bro.
Bless you, Alvin. I think it's important that there's a balance. And,
right.
and that balance is your skill sets have to match your what's the word I'm looking for? The skill sets
it has to match the knowledge of what you're doing though. I mean, like I give you a perfect example. Because you were military police. Now, whether you had military training in how to fight or not, or you just had the streets of New York that took you over that, but you had your mouth and you knew you wasn't scared enough to do what you had to do. And that's what I'm trying to say. If you're going to hire punks, then train punks to justify it. Because I'm tired of you justifying punks shooting people and saying, well, they did it within the scope of the law. They were able to do it, and that's why they did it. Well, listen, I want to see this dude throw his hands up and get some elbows and some eye strikes and gouges, and then tell me, yo, he was still getting handed, and now he had to use his firearm. I'll justify that and say, okay, he fought first. You understand what I'm saying? And that's all I'm trying to say. Please give me something more than just saying he was able to shoot and kill, and that's it.
Justify shooting. But I think at the end of the day, it's a combination of those things. We have to look at one, training, two, what's in that handbook that maybe needs to be tweaked. Because you can't just say this is a justifiable shooting. If you start to take all the numbers and you switch it and you say, okay, these are now white people being killed by black officers across our nation. I think the tolerance and the stomach for what they have right now would quickly change. And I mean, we saw this summer when everybody was up when Floyd was suffocated right there on the street. He was literally murdered right there. So it takes those righteous indignations to move the needle just a little bit for us, and then we got to turn up and make it a hot city, and then people look at us and see that look how they are, and it's really interesting. And I say this for your audience: the people that had reservations, even black folks were saying, yeah, well, the president he ran a campaign that says that.
He ran a campaign on violence.
On violence, and that we were creating anarchy and watch us and do this and do that. And he sent National Guards. No, they weren't National Guards. I think they were regular military that he sent to one of the Midwest cities to protect the building. To protect the buildings. They were there in that city against the mayor's wishes to protect the federal buildings. Where were those people when for 3-4 hours they took over the Capitol and he was just up the street and did nothing? So the hypocrisy goes on and on. And the point I was trying to make is if you got good hand skill sets and a mind to complement that, then I think that officer, male or female, will always do those things accordingly. But if you got a bad set of noodles going on and you have the skill sets, and then you put those noodles that are mixed up with those skill sets, then you're still going to hurt somebody. So I think one of the things that we would do is...
and you know, Al, let me interject. You're totally right. So, I mean, we're seeing, and not saying just in New York, but we're just talking about in the world now. A lot of times we're seeing people put in situations and they're giving this firearm and they're taking advantage of this firearm. So I'm just saying a busted lip.
They're the punks that you're talking about, and the only reason they become a hero or they got some skills is because they know they got that 9. But if you take that away, you know, they're the kind of give me your lunch money. That kind
exactly.
And exactly. So I concur with you there. I think when you were talking about the training and the different units, I was immediately thinking about we do it. I'm not in the military anymore, but we had K9 units that did special things. you had CID that did things, and you had undercover unit. So there's nothing, and I think it shouldn't be a heavy lift, and maybe we need to follow this up. If you're training for domestic violence and how to enter those situations, because sometimes there's a mental issue happening there. And let's not say necessarily mental as much as emotional. So you have a highly emotional person. When you're emotional, you do things whether you're clock right or not. So maybe take those trainers and put them together. And I would only say, I would say the pushback would be, I want a qualified person there that ain't scared and they have the skill sets to do. Now, if it happens to be a man, a woman, a black, or white, give me that person, because I know they're proven, to your point. Someone that's proven. Now, I've had some cats that they were blonde hair, blue eyes, and you wouldn't think, you look at them and like, what do they know? But they had skill sets like, yo, they hung up. They hung out on the other side of the track. So they down, don't let the look get them. So you have those kind of guys out there. You probably rock with a few of them in your career, but they're far and few and in between. And I forgot to mention to Mr. Bragg, there is, Alvin, they at the Jocelyn from Cy Vance's office, and I forgot the other lady. I chop it up with them. I see them in different circles. I meant to, just things that I want to say before I go off air. Not to.
Oh no, go ahead. Yeah.
Not that he's not here, but I've worked with them here in the Heights, but they have kind of pulled back since the COVID-19. But I go to these precinct council meetings. I'm on Zoom with them. I go into space, so I see them in those places. But I think we need to lift the profile a little bit more so that everybody knows who the DA is and what they do. And it's not just, oh God, you got to see the DA came. Get to know who these people are. Let them see us in school. Let them see them in these kind of spaces, so that the first encounter with a judge is not when you're standing in front of one, or the first time you are talking to a lawyer is not because you need one before they go in front of a judge. We have to debunk all of that stuff and make these things accessible. And I think Real Talk is a great place to be. It's a great time to be informative. And we're going to bring a couple of more of these guys by here, and women that are running to do those things.
Anybody. I meant to ask Alvin before we go, how many people are running for this seat, because the bottom line is everybody from a journalistic standpoint, I try to give you the people that Al and I can set up, and you interview them for yourself. This is the one thing, the Real Talk Chronicles. I sit here, I personally hasn't taken aside my personal feelings. From a journalistic standpoint, I don't right away, unless if it was somebody get Trump, then I'm gonna tell you I'm definitely going for them. But the bottom line is, I want everybody to feel comfortable and have a fair shot at presenting their case. Of course, there is a closeness with Al Taylor. There's a closeness with Alvin Bragg and things of that magnitude. And there's a closeness with a lot of people. So a lot of people, because if you know a lot of people, then a lot of people come on and you're able to converse with them and share their side. But the bottom line is, Al and I will pick this conversation up more about, training and people, because the bottom line is there isn't anything that's foolproof. Something's going to happen eventually along the way. Like Al said, you teach a loose noodle how to fight, and now you got a whole bunch of excessive force charges. We don't want that. So you know what I'm saying? So there's always something you're going to lose. But the bottom line is, we want to do more, maybe just more extensive training for those that maybe deserved it or deserve it. And, even de-escalating. That's why they always said law enforcement, you had the biggest gang in the world. Everybody, that's Assemblyman Al Taylor. I'm Bill Forster. Al, you want to give them some positive affirmation before we get out of here, brother? Because it is that time.
Listen, thank you all so much. Again, big shout out to candidate Alvin Bragg, who is running for Manhattan District Attorney. I have endorsed him based on his qualifications. There are 6 other people in that race, and if they want to come and share this platform with us on my Monday night, they're welcome. I'm sure they're listening and watching and finding out. If I can run across him, I will. But I certainly want to thank him, and I know we kept him long. And on a campaign trail, although we are doing Zooms, there's plenty to be done and plenty to happen.
Oh, it's probably, Al, they're probably working even harder now because of the Zooms, because now they know you home, and especially in the snow. Sorry, Alvin Bragg, if you're still listening, I just pushed it a little longer because I figured you was in the house. So the only thing you had to do is probably go to the bathroom, or your wife was telling you, no, I'm just playing. You might have had some other meetings and stuff like that.
Yeah, Everybody else want them. You know, you got to prep for this, call for that, because
Yeah.
everyone wants to make sure that they have access to the conversation. Well, I know I called them, I reached him, and he didn't call me back. He on that show. But certainly thank you for your time. And I didn't think we were going to do more than an hour. I didn't think I was going to do an hour, but it just rose here. To the folks that are listening, maybe
vote.
Yeah, vote. You know, people would lynch for the opportunity to vote. And I can't say enough. Just understand who's out there, whatever borough you're running in, whatever county you find yourself, whatever state you're in. Be a part of the process. Be a part of the solution and not the problem. And your vote does matter. Everything that you do. So we are so fortunate in this snowstorm here in New York that we're hunkered down, and you with Real Talk with Brother Bill Foster, Real Chronicles. We're right here. The best part of him, and he's so amazing, but the best is Malika, y'all. She keeps us locked in.
Shout you out.
It's steaming. You know.
She said she loves you, Al.
Yeah, like we're not gonna give Malika a shout out. And my wife is calling, so she's
tell my sister I said hello too, please. Everybody.
She hung up, but so her store, like she's not at the store, but she had to stay in the hotel next to the store because we anticipated it was gonna be crazy. So she'll call me back. That's how I got that extra couple of minutes today. See?
Oh yeah, so yeah, exactly. You got a chance to play. Well, tell Sister Gwen.
Hanging out late, son.
Please tell. Yeah, we hanging today. Exactly. We got our water and we hanging. Exactly.
Yeah. There it is, baby. There it is.
So everybody, please listen. If you have somebody that's running for office and you can channel them towards myself, Al, whomever, please let us. We will interview them. If they're not interviewed on Al's night, we'll find a night to interview them. But Al, see, the beautiful thing about Real Talk Chronicles, my host can move. We can move to different nights for each other. So that's a beautiful thing about that. So we can bring all our Real Talk Chronicle hosts together. If it's somebody that deserves, if you got Vance, you know what I'm saying? Whoever, you got Corey Johnson or whomever that's running for office, if you can have them and we don't have them, give them to us. This is Real Talk Chronicles. We're going to ask them the real questions. Yep. We ain't scared. What you going to do to us? Yes.
I tell them one more. Drop in the chat who you like to see in ranked choice voting. Give us the people in the order that you want to see them, and then let us go to work.
That's what we do.
You've been requested.
That's what we do.
And if you don't answer the request, we're going to say, hey, listen, we sent an invitation, but they didn't show up. They didn't even respond. I'm just saying, no pressure.
Don't play with our emotions. That's Al Taylor. I'm Bill Foster, Real Talk Chronicles. We see y'all later, everybody.
Out of here like Kurt Gowdy.
Word.